In the game of poker, there are two separate but equally important types of players. The recreational players that are just looking to splash around and have a good time, and the wrecks that are trying to take every dollar that isn't nailed down. These are their stories.
I had been playing exclusively at the lodge up until this point. I had heard TCH open a new card club a few months before my trip, and I definitely wanted to go down and check it out. I'd been to their old location once. It was small and quaint, kind of nice, good action, but I'd heard this place was nice, so I decided to stop in and check it out. This first hand happens probably 5 minutes after I sit down. I'd only posted my blinds once, and I look down at King-Queen offsuit. I don't really know what the standard open here at TCH is, but I know at the lodge when you're playing in a 1-2 game, you can get away with opening $10 to $15, a 5 to 7x open, and get plenty of action. So I figured I'd start off with something small, kind of feel out the table and see where I go. I open it up to 10 and I get called in 3 spots. Seems like standard Texas poker so far. Flop comes down King Jack 5 with a couple of diamonds. Definitely a good flop for my range and my actual hand. I go ahead and continue for $15, betting small into a multi-way pot. I get called in 2 spots, really not all that surprising. We take the turn 9 of hearts 3 ways. That brings in a second backdoor flush draw, and Queen 10 gets there, although I do have a blocker for that straight. I want to keep the pressure up, so I bet 55 on this flop. I get called by the cutoff, and we're going to go to the river heads up. River is the 3 of diamonds, bringing in the front door flush draw. I wasn't really reading the guy as strong at this point, so I decided I was going to try to get some value. I lead out for 75, and he folds pretty quickly. Not exactly sure what he had here, but it's a good start to the session. I've been on this table for 10 or 15 minutes now, and I feel like I have a good read on everybody. There doesn't really seem to be anybody that's too particularly aggressive. There's a couple of OMCs, really nothing I have to worry about. I'm on the button and I look down at the 4-3 of spades. This is definitely at the bottom of my opening range, but I don't expect to be 3-bet from the blinds unless somebody has kings plus, maybe ace king suited. So I feel I can get away with a little bit more than I would in a normal game. I open it up to 15, I get called in a couple of spots, and we take a flop 3-handed. Flop comes down 8-6 deuce with a couple of diamonds, giving me a gut shot. I'm hoping that this sort of flop misses everybody. They normally call down with high cards, so unless somebody has ace-8 or maybe a diamond draw, I might be able to take this down with a bet right here. Surprisingly, the cutoff to my right donks out for $20. I think that if I hit my gut shot, I might be able to get a sizable chunk from him, and if not, well, maybe I can steal it from him on a later street. I call the 20, as does the big blind, and we still 3-handed going to the turn. Turn is a perfect 5 of hearts, jackpot card for me. This time the cutoff leads out for 75. I'm guessing it's a good thing that I hit my hand because it doesn't seem like he was in the mood to fold. I just flat call because I want to keep the big blind in, but unfortunately he didn't get the memo and he folds out. River comes to 9 of hearts, bringing our one-liner to a 7. He continues betting out for the same $75 bet. I feel like he's trying to set his price because this pot is getting a little bloated. I think for a long time trying to figure out if there's any value in raising, and I come to the conclusion that there isn't. In hindsight, I feel like this was a bit of a mistake. I think if I shove in the raise, he's going to have a really tough time folding a set or even possibly 2 pair. People at this level just can't find folds once they fall in love with a hand, and he just doesn't have a lot of 7s in his range the way this hand was played. If I could have this one back, I think I would jam on him, put his feet to the fire, and maybe I get paid, maybe I don't. As played though, I just call and turn over the winner. He seems a little surprised and disgusted by what I had, but eventually mucks his hand face down. At TCH, they play a double board PLO bomb pot once in orbit, so about every 15 minutes we're playing one hand of this, mixed in with all the hold'em we have been playing. So I will be highlighting a few of these hands throughout the night as well. I've said it before, I believe that double board bomb pots, especially PLO, are one of the best ways to increase your bankroll and increase your win rate because people are just so bad at them. That being said, I wake up in what would normally be the big blind position with Jack 5 deuce with a couple of clubs. 7 of us go to the flop as is standard in a PLO bomb pot. The first flop comes down Queen Jack 10 with a couple of spades, and the second one is 8-6 King with a couple of diamonds. Top board gives me second set on a very wet and dynamic board, and the bottom board I really don't have much cooking. I lead out for a pot-sized bet and get called in 3 spots. I feel I'm probably going to have to improve if I want to have any stake in this pot. The top turn is the 4 of clubs, not really changing anything. Bottom turn is a 7 of clubs, giving us a backdoor flush draw and a gut shot straight draw to the low end. A little bit of hope, but nothing to get too excited about. I may have played this one a little bit overly aggressive as I make another pot-sized bet. Fortunately, 2 of the 3 opponents fold, and the last guy calls for his last 35. The top turn is a 6 of clubs, not changing anything there, and the bottom turn is a jack of hearts, giving me a sneaky set there. I turn over my cards, and it turns out that a set on both boards is good enough to take it down, and I win a sizable pot. See? Bomb pots are easy. This next hand is one I definitely wish I could have back, and I'm not just being results orientated. I was just caught up in the beginning of a little bit of a heater, and really wasn't thinking the situation all the way through. The cutoff opens for $20, which in its own right was a little surprising. This is the first aggressive action I've seen this player take pre-flop in the entire hour and a half I'd been here at this point. This should have been setting off alarm bells in my head right away. The button calls the 20, and I look down an ace-queen offsuit in the small blind. According to the solver, this is about a 50-50 split between a squeeze and a fold. I have to remember though, I'm not playing against computers. This guy's opening range is a lot tighter than what it normally should be from the cutoff. If I put him on what I feel a standard passive 1-2 player's opening range is, ace-queen offsuit from out of position is probably a fold almost every time. As played, I do put in the squeeze. It folds back around to him, and he wastes no time before shoving in his remaining chips for a total bet of $145. The button folds, and I flick in a call. Now this is where I even deviated from the solver. This is never a call, never in a million years. I am never ahead with ace-queen. I mean, what do I think he's jamming with? Ace-jack? King-queen? Maybe racing with tens? No, this is just a fold every time. As played, I flick in the call without really thinking about it. The flop comes down king high, actually giving me a gut shot. The turn pairs a king, the river's a 5, and he shows me the aces that I probably should have known he had from the very beginning. I lose 145 on this pot, and I'm hoping that long term I can learn a lesson from this. Ace-queen offsuit from out of position is rarely a good hand to be playing unless you are the one doing the betting. To put a finishing point on the last hand we just went over, I want you to keep an eye on the guy in the number 6 seat with the bracelets on. Just notice how passive he is and how much more that should have been an alarm for me when he ends up coming out actually raising. Anyways, in this next hand we're in the cutoff, and there's 3 limps in front of us when we look down at the king-jack of clubs and raise it up to $15. We get called by the button, the small blind, and our friend in the number 6 seat. Flop comes down jack 6-5 rainbow, giving us top pair. Everybody checks to us, and I go with a half pot size bet, getting called by the small blind. 4 of hearts on the turn does bring in a straight. The small blind checks, and I decide to check it back for a little bit of pot control. A top pair hand like this is really only good for 2 streets of value. The river 8 of clubs puts a 1-liner to a 7 out there. Now the small blind leads out for $45. 2 previous hands that I wasn't involved in but definitely paying attention to, I noticed that this player had let out on very scary rivers with very weak hands, and one time even a stone cold bluff. If he's got a 7 or 2 pair, he's just going to have to show it to me. I toss in the 45, he shows me 2 red 9s, and they are a second place hand to my jacks.
Yeah, boy.
This next hand starts out with our buddy in the 6th seat limping for $2 under the gun. Middle position next to act raises to 6, which technically is a 3x open, but in this game that's pretty much like a limp. I want to play this hand heads up when I look down at the 10-9 of hearts, so I 3-bet him to $25. This bet serves its purpose as everyone folds back around to the middle position. He calls a 25 and we take a flop heads up. Flop comes 5-5-3 with a couple of clubs. This hand doesn't really hit my range or my particular holding. The middle position guy checks to me and I lead out for $20. Not exactly sure what I think I'm representing here, and at this point I think I might have been on a little bit of winner's tilt. Everything had been pretty much going my way, and I just felt like I could just run over the table or something. I don't know. Anyways, he takes a little bit of time and then min clicks me to $40. This should have been my exit point right here. Just on to the next one, it didn't work out, and that's okay. As played, I felt like if any sort of big overcard comes, I could probably steal it from him on the turn. I call the extra 20 and we go to the turn. The 10 of clubs comes down, bringing in the front door flush and also giving me a pair. He leads into me for 50, and at this point, I feel like I might have showdown value against, I don't know, 9s? Something? I don't know. I call the 50 and we are still heads up. The river is the 6 of spades, and he bets out for $50 again. At this point, I feel like this is kind of a blocker bet. Maybe he has an overpair and he's a little scared of a very Sketchy run out. I know if I had 2 kings, I wouldn't be very happy with this board. I decide to turn my top pair into a bluff and bump it up to 235. I feel like might be able to make him fold something here. I don't know. Again, I think this was just winner's tilt. He snaps me off and shows me the ace-5 of spades. I think this is one of the biggest leaks that's still in my game. When someone tries to tell me repeatedly that they have a good hand, I just need to listen to them. I could have gotten away from this hand on the flop, or at the very least just called the river and saved myself $185. Nothing really exciting happens for me for the next hour or so, until we get a bomb pot and I'm in the low jack position. I'm dealt king, queen, jack, 8 with a couple of diamonds. We take a flop 7 ways, and the first flop is queen 10 deuce with a couple of diamonds, and the second flop is king queen 9 with a couple of diamonds. So I flop flush draws on both boards, as well as 2 pair on the bottom and an open ender on the top. I definitely like my chances at this point. I bet out $35, and only my old friend in the number 6 seat gives us a call. Turn is the deuce of clubs on the top board, pairing the board there, and the bottom turn is the 5 of diamonds, giving us a flush on the bottom. I really don't think I'm in a bad spot, so I continue for another pot-sized bet of $105. He gives us another call. When he doesn't raise, I feel like I'm in a good spot. The first river is the jack of hearts, missing our straight draw but giving us top 2 pair, which might be good in an emergency. The second river is the 3 of hearts, not really changing much of anything there. We had the second nuts. He checks to us, and I bet $300, not realizing he only has 75 left. He shoves in his remaining stack. I turn over my hand, and I'm good for all of it. So I was able to get most of the money back I lost to him when he had the aces. I guess that's a small consolation that I just let him hold it for a while. In this next hand, we're playing another bomb pot. I'm in the cutoff, and we're 5-handed, and I look down at the queen 7-7-6 rainbow hand. First flop comes down 8-7 deuce rainbow, and the second flop comes down 7-6-3 with 2 diamonds. So I flop top set on both boards. This is the kind of hand where I could easily scoop as long as things go my way. I bet out $25. I get called by the button, as well as an early position player, and we take a couple of turns, 3 ways. First turn is a 4 of hearts, and the second turn is the 4 of spades. It's kind of hard to tell if something changes anything because the nuts are always changing in Omaha. You just never know what you're up against. But I still like my hand with a couple of sets. Even if I'm behind, I have lots of outs to improve. The early position guy leads out for $100, which is a little surprising. I like to play bomb pots hard and fast, so I repot and make it $400. The button folds, and the early position guy calls pretty quickly for his remaining stack. First river is a 9 of hearts, and the second river is the jack of spades. He rolls over his hand and I see the nut straight on the bottom. That's not too much of a surprise, but on the top he hit runner flush to scoop the pot away from me. Sometimes bomb pots can get really fickle on you. I flopped really well but had a couple of unfortunate runouts, and I end up losing the maximum on this one. In this hand there's a couple of limps in front of me before the cutoff raises it to 6. I look down at the 9-7 of spades in the small blind and I elect to call. Calling from the small blind in a situation like this is probably the worst of the 3 options. Folding is definitely fine. If you're going to play this hand, I feel it should be for a raise. As played, I call, get 2 other callers behind me, and we take a flop 4 ways. Flop comes king 4-4 rainbow. I check, as does everyone else. I completely whiff on this board, so I check. Everyone else does as well. Turn is the queen of spades giving me a flush draw. I like picking up a little bit of equity, and nobody showed much interest on the flop. I'm from the blind, so maybe I could represent a slow played 4. I go ahead and lead out for $15. One player folds, but I do get 2 calls, and we're going to go see a river 3 ways. I think I'm going to have to hit a spade to really make this hand. The river is a brick 6 of clubs. I don't think there's any way I can win with 9 high, and I'm hoping that since nobody has showed much interest in this pot, maybe I can blast everyone else off of it. I bet 65. One early position guy starts cutting out some chips, and I can tell by the way he's cutting them out that he's probably going to be sticking them in the middle. My other opponent looks like he's just waiting for his turn to fold, so I just have to hope and pray that the early position guy finds the fold. He doesn't. He tosses in the 65, shows me top 2 pair, and I lose another pot. I think I'm starting to get bit by fancy play syndrome, and it's starting to cost me some real money. In this last hand we're going to go over for today, I pick up ace queen in middle position after one person had limped ahead of me. I noticed the guy to my left hemmed and hawed and was looking like he might want to throw in a raise before finally making the call, but I chose to ignore that information at the time because I had a nice looking hand and I was down a little bit and really starting to get impatient, if I'm going to be honest with about how I was playing at the time. Anyways, the guy to my left calls before the cutoff and the button also tossed in the call, and then the big blind jams for $70 all in. I really wanted to isolate him, which I don't think is the worst play in a vacuum, but again, there was the guy to my left who was looking like he might want to put in a raise, so I don't think I'm going to be able to isolate him no matter what I do. Of course, that's easy to say 2 weeks after the session and knowing what the result was. At the time, I was feeling impatient and I wanted to pull down a pot, and I had a nice hand. I 4-bet to 180. The guy to my left goes all in for 231 total. Everyone else folds, and now it's back to me, and I guess I made my bet. I'm gonna have to lay in it. I tossed in the call, and we're going 3 ways for an all in, and I'm really just hoping I can beat one of these guys. 3-4-9 rainbow, deuce on the turn, 9 of clubs on the river. The big blind shows pocket tens, and the guy on my left shows pocket queens. I was in 3rd place. So after several hours of running well, I am up a grand total of $19 for the session so far. That's it for part 1 of this video. I had a really long session when I was at TCH. I ended up playing for about 12 hours. For the first half of this session, you can see I finished up $19, so a little bit less than minimum wage. I should have another video up in about a week where we can see if I ended up finishing with a few bucks in my pocket or if I just punted some money while I was in Austin. Anyways, that's all I got for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week.